bring to you some of the most amazing people in the world. Today is pretty special to me, I think. Special or hard? I don't know. Hold on, I gotta turn my music down. Because we're gonna be, I'm still hearing music, sorry. Anyway, the technology piece of this world is not my thing. Anyway, so today is a day that I've been looking forward to for a long time. I think it's close, it's near and dear to my heart. As many of you who watch the show know, oh, I forgot to do my, see, I'm just slow. As you know, my mom recently passed of glioblastoma, which is a type of brain cancer. And it took her about 6 weeks from diagnosis to when we lost her. And it was like this quick learning, crazy educational session for me that I could do nothing about. Like, there's literally nothing that I can do. And for one, my parents wouldn't let me do anything, and 6 weeks, not a lot of time. So, my husband's dad passed of cancer, and the thing that I think is so near and dear to my heart is, it's frustrating that we have so much of this going on, this constant diagnosis of cancer. I feel surrounded by it constantly. But these are things that I'm hoping that we're learning, and we're learning how to mitigate. We're learning that the chemicals in our food and our environment are toxic and creating problems. We're learning that even when we do have the diagnosis, that when we create a team of people who help us through the process, those people help us to understand the food we need, understand our biochemical uniqueness, understand what it is that we can do to get through the process and continue moving forward with our lives. And that's what it's about. And this show, we bring to you people who are true experts in their field, and they're amazing at what they do, and I get so excited about it because they're here to serve, to teach, to benefit everybody around them. And so I'm gonna stop rambling. This is what I do every time, but I can't help it because I get all excited about it. But so today we have Jen Nolan, who is Vice President and Lead Oncology Nutrition Consultant. I'm going to get it all there. Of Remission Nutrition. And so I was introduced to Jen back, it's been several months ago now. I believe it was right after maybe my mom passed. Was it? Yeah. Okay. So will you say something? You're very quiet. Like I can't hear you.
Yes.
Oh,
can you hear me?
Okay, gotcha. Okay, awesome.
I was just being quiet.
So thank you so much for being here. I'm amazingly grateful, and I just can't wait to dig in because there's so much that people need to hear from you. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay. Awesome. Okay, I can't wait to dig in. But as always, gratitude can change the world. So let's talk about what we're grateful for, because gratitude changes the mindset, it changes the biochemistry, it changes our energy, and it goes out to the world and it changes the world. And we have a lot to be grateful for, even though there are some frustrations. So take time every morning, and if you can every evening, or however works best for you, and find something to be grateful for, because it truly can make massive changes in everything around you. So, Jen, what are you grateful for?
Well, I love this, and I'm such a fan of gratitude, and try to instill this practice in my own life and my family's and my clients. So, well, today I'm grateful for being here with you, Nikki. Thank you. And I'd like to say a little bit about the gratitude I have for this journey and how I got into this work. And it's similar to what you just said. I also lost my mom, so this is very near and dear to my heart. And she was only 56, so she was super young, and she lived for many years. And her journey is really what brought me here. So that's what my big gratitude is today.
You know, none of us want to lose anybody to anything. But I say this a lot about the hard stuff in life. It's the hard stuff in life that gives us character, that teaches us, that allows us to grow and to build on who we are and what we have and what we can be. And losing moms sucks really bad. But it also is, it's also an amazing lesson, and it can give so much. I learned a ton through my mom and her situation. And so I think all I'm trying to say is it sucks, but it also is that growth, and it brought you to where you are, and you're helping however many thousands of people now with what you're doing and making a difference, and hopefully extending those lives that may not have been extended, right? So thank you. Yeah.
And I feel like being on the journey with them, it's just a big honor for me, but also a way for me to honor my mom and her life.
Yeah.
Love.
Oh, so young. So young. It's heartbreaking. What am I grateful for today? Holy smokes. Besides just having the ability to allow people to hear, to bring to people what you do, I'm just grateful for warm weather. And I know right now it's really warm, but I'll take it over the really cold. I got the garden growing. I'm starting to get some veggies, and got the raspberries and the cherries, and so I get to go outside and pick my lunch, and that's like my favorite thing in the world, is to go outside and pick my lunch. So I think that's what I'm really grateful for today, because every day I look forward to it. I look forward to picking my lunch. But we're also dealing with, do y'all have Japanese beetles where you are?
They look like, what do they look like?
Kind of green and red. They're actually really pretty little beetles, but they're terrible. You're probably too high. I want to lift up Denver in the summer because they're horrible. They're horrible. And so every day I go out, I pick my lunch, and I put beetles in soapy water. And I pick my lunch, and I put beetles in soapy water. So anyway, for those of you who are fighting the Japanese beetles, I feel your pain. It's no good. Okay, so let's dive in. Let's get a little bit about who you are, we know what you do, but why you do what you do, what brought you here. Obviously, we know some about your mom, but you have an amazing history in nutrition and health and wellness. And I'm a little bit envious. I'm like, I want to do that too. So let's just talk about what got you here, what brought you here.
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is what I already shared, was my mom's journey. And I really got, I grew up in Minnesota. I was kind of a city girl. I didn't really do a lot in health and wellness. And then I wound up moving to Crested Butte, Colorado in my early 20s, right around the same time that my mom was diagnosed. And I went to school at Colorado State University to become a dietitian. And I went through the food science program there, the dietetics, and graduated and decided not to become a registered dietitian. So I went through a bunch of other trainings, kind of a whole slew, as you said, of trainings. I got my master's in holistic nutrition. I went through some sports nutrition training. I did, just kind of kept going, with this, just kept learning while, having a child and having a business, a clothing store in Denver, and all kinds of great things. Fun. Yeah, it was awesome. That was 20 years ago. And then I just kept on learning and learning and learning. And finally, I heard about this program that Jess Kelley had going on it was through NTI at the time. It's now run through ONI, which is Oncology Nutrition Institute. And I just started hounding her. Like, when are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And so finally I hopped on and took this incredible program for oncology nutrition consulting. And when I did that, she pretty much hired me on with Remission Nutrition right away. And so I've been consulting with her for several years now. And it's just great. I have training in genetics, so I use a lot of genetic information, or I guess we can call it nutrigenomics. So I've gone through that training. I work for a company, or with a company out of Germany. It's a sort of metabolic health company. It's called Metabolic Balance. So I coached through them for years, but I always kind of I always say I kind of had my toes in the water a little bit with nutrition and was always doing other things. And once I hopped on with Remission Nutrition, it's been my full-time gig. And that's been really great, just to dedicate all of my time to one thing rather than being so scattered. So
yeah, no, I love that. You know, it is. It's sometimes it's hard when you are that type that just wants to learn. Because I'm the same way. I'm all over the place. I'm like, okay, I want to learn more about the cancer stuff, and I want to learn more about autoimmune stuff, and I want to, it's just like, okay, focus. It's not easy.
Well, I had a friend one time she's a naturopath friend of mine, and she was like, Jen, you have to find a something, like a focus.
Yeah.
And what's cool about this work is that, yes, our focus is oncology, but what we do is also could be helpful. Like, we work so much with prevention, and so what we do can help with so many different things, and we look at all those things. So if somebody does have an autoimmune condition, the gut health things, food allergies, all of these things we still work on because we're digging in. We're not just saying, oh, you have cancer, let's do this. We're looking at the whole situation.
Which is so important. A little bit of history here is it's interesting because I went to NTI, which is Nutrition Therapy Institute here in Colorado, and Jess Kelley was one of my instructors. And we did, at the time, I was kind of hybrid. I did in class, and this was way pre-COVID, but I did in class as well as online. And so she was one of my online instructors, and I never actually got to meet her, but she taught me some things that today stick in my head. And so we ended up just reconnecting, and then she connected me to you. And so we'll have Jess on here, I think, in a month or so, probably. So she'll be great. Another really great one to have on. But anyway, it's getting back to the oncology piece. What I talk to my clients about, and what you're doing, and I hit on this just a bit ago, just briefly, but if you're dealing with anything chronic, including cancer, obviously, but if you're dealing with anything chronic, in my mind, you have to build a team. You have to find the people who are your trusted resources, who know you as well as possible, but also who know your situation, who are experts in your situation, and then will communicate and work together for your benefit. And so when we're looking at things like Oncology Nutrition and all of the amazing things that they do, I mean, this is oncology nutrition, oncology functional nutrition, right? I talk about functional nutrition and what that means. It's looking for the root cause. It's understanding biochemical individuality, and then stress factors, sleep, trauma history, exercise, all of the things that go into what a body needs, either before you're in a chronic situation or during. And so I want to dig into the nutrition stuff, because there's so much information and misinformation in the world of health and wellness, period, but let alone cancer. And it is stressful, it's scary, it's hard, and I want to talk about the different diets. I hate the word diet, but I think diet is very appropriate when we're looking at therapeutic diets. And so I want to talk about that, and I want to get your thoughts on keto, on vegan, on fasting, all of those things. I want to understand I know what y'all do, but I want everybody to hear your thoughts and the why behind what you do and why you do it. Does that make sense? It's kind of a big question.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a big question, and I will say that, first of all, you mentioned the bio-individuality. I think that's huge. So one of the things that we do is, first of all, we never ever treat cancer. So we treat the terrain, which is something, it's a term that we use, and it's similar to like the systems of the body. So a lot of naturopaths would use the term systems. So it's all of those things you mentioned. We look at inflammation, stress, movement, sleep, you know, the list goes on and on, hormone balance, blood sugar balance, all those things. So we really are very bio-individualized. So we don't just say, oh, here's your protocol and you're going to be on this particular diet, whether it's a ketogenic diet or, you know, whatever. Everybody is going to fast. Everybody is going to be on a ketogenic diet. So I think that's really important to understand first. So we gather a lot of information from people, a lot, and as much testing as possible, and we can talk about that later. I would say that I would say that the backbone to all of what we do is metabolic health. So we want to help people become metabolically healthy. And I guess metabolic flexibility, you'll hear that term a lot. So making sure people are not on this insane sort of I always do this. This is my blood sugar roller coaster. So we want to keep people off of that. We want to balance them. And everybody's going to be different. I mean, I have people coming to me that are full on eating a standard American diet. They are Nutrition 101. You know, so we're starting in a far different place with them. If we have somebody who, you know, is like your mom was with, you know, glioblastoma, there's a lot of research that shows that a ketogenic diet could be helpful for somebody in that place. And so we might need to move a little bit quicker with them, Nutrition 101 or not, if that makes sense. So we know, I will say that we do use more of an ancestral sort of diet, a Paleolithic kind of diet. So we don't subscribe to, I would not have somebody, if somebody came into me, I would not say, let's put you on a vegan diet or a, you know, plant-only diet, or a juicing diet, because that can really deplete people, and we see this a lot. So a lot of times people get a diagnosis, they get on the internet, and it's really prevalent, right, to see this plant-based raw food juicing diet. So they'll go to that quite quickly, and I always say, you know, they come to us and I'm like, okay, well, that wasn't a bad thing. It's okay, you know, that you did that. I'm not trying to make anybody feel like they did the wrong thing. You probably got a really great cleanse and maybe hit a reset button, especially if you were doing a, you know, standard American diet and went to that. So it does sort of sometimes help people get, you know, that quickie kind of fix in a way, but then oftentimes they start to feel like junk. And labs, we look at a lot of lab work and we see a lot of people very depleted. So we try to, then it's this conversation of like, okay, can we get some eggs in? How about some fish? How about, you know, and sort of work that in. Now, I will say that I personally will very much honor somebody who is like, I had somebody recently who is an ethical vegan. They were like 100% absolutely no. And I'm going to support them and do the best we can with, you know, the different plants that will really support them and really, you know, just nourish them as best we can. So I'm not, you know, I don't want to say no, but mostly we're looking at more of an ancestral Paleolithic diet where we have some animal proteins. I also am a big fan of sort of a Mediterranean style ketogenic diet. So we're not talking about, people call it dirty keto or internet keto. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a very healthy, you know, full of olive oil and olives and avocados and nuts and seeds and fish and tons of vegetables. So again, everybody's a little different with somebody. There's different levels of a ketogenic diet. That's a really great tool for us. And earlier when I was talking about the terrains, a ketogenic diet can really help, you know, kind of hit all of those different systems of the body and improve them and really get us in a more metabolically flexible way. So I don't know if I answered your question, but hopefully. Okay.
Will you do me a favor? I have been working on my own metabolic flexibility, but will you talk a little bit about that and explain what that means?
Yeah, you bet. So what I would say, there's a few things. So if I'm talking to somebody, a really big indicator of somebody not being metabolically flexible, metabolic flexibility would be defined, I think, as being able to have really balanced energy and really balanced blood sugar. So we're not having huge spikes and drops. Again, that's that, you know, that thing, the ups and the downs, the highs and the crashes, and just, not feeling all that great. Somebody that comes to me and they're like, I have to eat before I go to bed or I can't sleep.
Yep.
Or I wake up every night in the middle of the night and I need to go to the fridge to get a snack to go back to sleep.
Yep.
I wake up in the morning and I'm so hungry.
Mm-hmm.
I can't go without snacking.
Mm-hmm.
I have to eat all day long. That is a really big indicator of that metabolic flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll ask, do you get hungry at 3 p.m? Or do you need to go take a nap or grab coffee? That can be an indicator of metabolic inflexibility.
Right.
So we don't want highs and lows in our blood sugar because that can be very inflammatory to the bottom body. It's also really hard on the organs. We think about the pancreas having to shoot out insulin all the time.
Yeah.
This is what causes, or is a big cause of, metabolic syndrome. So, and metabolic syndrome is a driver.
Yep.
I think everybody can agree that it's a driver for so many diseases.
Yeah.
Not only, not just cancer.
Right. No, totally agree. For example, Alzheimer's, right? They're calling it type 3 diabetes. So much of it is we get way too much simple sugars and way too much carbohydrate in our diet that's not feeding us. And I would say, too, metabolic flexibility being the ability to switch between burning fat and carbs and being efficient about it, right? Yeah. So thank you for that. I have been doing a little bit of study, and, as my own best guinea pig, I'm always I'm testing my glucose and I'm testing my ketones and I'm looking at what foods I react to, and it's just really silly and fun, and I love it. Yeah,
it is. And I think, this jumps a topic a little bit, but I think to remember that it's not just food that makes an impact on our blood sugar. So, poor sleep, elevated cortisol, can make a big difference. So sometimes it's not only about what we eat and when we eat, it has to do with stress, A lot of people are using those CGMs, the continuous glucose monitors, the thing on the back of the arm. And it's fascinating. I was talking to a client one time and she was telling me, she was like, I hadn't eaten anything. And I'm sitting in my kitchen and my son came in and he, they got into this thing. And she said she looked at her monitor, her numbers, and it was like through the roof.
Yep. Isn't that interesting what stress will do? Stress will increase your glucose so easily. And I think also if you don't eat enough or you don't eat when you're hungry, it can increase stress, which is going to increase glucose. So it's so interesting, the body and how intricate it is and what makes a difference, and getting to the people who know you and know how to help you through these crazy times. It's so important. I have a quick question though about the glucose, the constant glucose monitoring.
Continuous, yeah.
Continuous. Thank you. I was like, where are my words? What do you think about that? Because a lot of them are Bluetooth, or maybe all of them are Bluetooth, and so I started thinking the electromagnetic frequencies. Yeah. Yeah. I agree, and I don't know enough about them to know if the Bluetooth, because some of these devices now, they're not going while they're on your body. Okay. So if you have, say when you're asleep, and don't quote me on this, but I'd have to look into it, but while you're asleep, if you're turning your phone off, or your internet off, then they're still collecting data, and then when you go to connect them back up, they've remembered, they have that memory. I think that might be the case. Okay. But it's a really good question. And I don't think a continuous glucose monitor is something that people are wearing for the long haul. They're using them for, say, it's a 6-week period or a 30-day period. And so it's not like you're just living with that thing on all the time. Yeah. So, I agree. And I think that's always, all of these devices. Yeah, so many, and there's just more and more and more, and the earbuds and it's crazy. So I want to. So we talked a lot about the healthy stuff, the good stuff. What it is that we want to do. But here's my experience. I think mostly with my husband's dad, because it was a long-term situation. And my experience was they sent him to the hospital dietitian who told him to eat these foods that broke my heart. It broke my heart. And we hear a lot when people are going through treatment, just keep weight on. So eat pudding and eat popsicles and drink Ensure. So I have to tell this story real quick because I was blown away. I didn't realize how these companies just sort of ingrain themselves in the medical system. But when I graduated nutrition school, I had pharmaceutical experience in my past. And so somebody came across my resume, reached out to me and said, hey, we have a pharmaceutical company who's expanding their nutrition wing, division. And, saw your resume and thought we would reach out. And I was like, okay, cool. So I just, I started to prepare for it. And then I thought, what is the nutrition product? And so it was selling into oncology. And so if you know anything about pharma, I mean, you get paid well and you get the car and you get the expense account and all of the stuff. But she told me, I asked her, I was like, what is this product? And she said, well, it's Ensure. And she almost said it like she didn't want to say it. And I'm going to tell you that I almost did the interview just to ask the people how they could do something like this. Because if you look at the ingredients of Ensure, there is nothing in it that is not inflammatory. The synthetic nutrients, I believe, are probably inflammatory. It's full of canola oil, full of sugar, full of dairy. It's the worst thing that you can put in somebody's body who is suffering with any kind of chronic condition. And so, obviously, I did not take the job or didn't even interview. I was like, okay, sorry, this is not my thing. But this is what we hear. And, in my experience also was my mother-in-law was very much in tune with health and what's good and what's bad. And when the dietitian told her to go get this product from the pharmacy downstairs, she bought 5 or 6 of them. She's like, I just didn't know what to do and I was afraid and I just needed to. And it's so hard to be put in the situation where you're the caretaker or you're the person who's sick and they're telling you to go get this stuff and you look at it, you're like, are you sure? But okay, because I'm freaking scared.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we have a lot of tools where we can help people to understand this is what you can use instead of that. Mm-hmm. And, I had a very interesting experience at CSU, and a pharmaceutical rep came in and did a test with all of us in class with Ensure, and they wanted us to taste the different flavors that they had. I think it was Ensure at the time because it was a long time ago. There's all kinds of companies doing this now, right? Yeah. But it was so sad to me, and even then I was like, this is just not right. Yeah. And so yes, we have, I'll start really quickly with, there is a weight gain shake recipe. So if anyone is looking for a great resource, the book that Jess Kelley wrote, co-authored with Dr. Nasha Winters, called The Metabolic Approach to Cancer, there is a recipe in there it's a great kind of weight gain shake. Nice. So that can be helpful. We want to make sure, so what happens is people hear all the time, eat whatever you want, just don't lose weight, right? Mm-hmm. Eat whatever you want, just don't lose weight. And so what we want to make sure that people aren't just adding in a bunch of carbohydrate, which is what that Ensure, amongst other things, is full of, because people will gain weight with that, but it's typically more of sort of this fatty weight or inflammatory weight. Mm-hmm. What we want is people to gain muscle mass. And so we're working with different ingredients for sure, making sure we can get, more protein in and more healthy fats. And, remembering to help people use their muscles. So that's a really big thing when somebody's like starting to kind of, there's that thing called cachexia, and that's that wasting syndrome. Mm-hmm. So we're really working with that. It's an inflammatory condition. So you add a bunch of Ensure, you're just adding more inflammation to the body. So how do we keep people eating, more protein. Maybe it's bone broth, really nourishing bone broth. Bone broth with salt, sodium is really nourishing, and maybe it's some fibrous vegetable and ginger. Ginger is like my go-to for people, especially when they're undergoing treatment. So what a great nourishing thing for them. It's warming to the system. Treatment can be very cooling to the system. So yeah, there's a lot of other things we can do, but it's difficult. I work with a lot of caregivers too, of course, and helping them off that cliff of fear is really part of our job as well.
Right, yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing, the bad information, but it's so awesome to get out the good information. And so, I think one of the things that I learned with my mom was that when there's a diagnosis, I think oftentimes, there's a push. You got to go get treatment now. You have to do this now. You have to do it right now. When many times, I think probably not in my mom's situation, but many, many times, you have some time to do the research and to look and to interview and to find people who can help you and to help guide you through the process, especially the decision-making process. I've talked to a couple of people who are coming to me going, guess what, here's where I am. And then that's what I do, is I'm sending them to people. I'm like, and you included, talk to these people, because just let them be a resource, because it's so hard and it's so confusing.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking about it as I was kind of getting ready for our conversation. If what I would tell somebody, what would the first thing to do, if they got a diagnosis. And I think you're exactly right. It's like, step back. You don't have to just instantly, in most cases, just jump right in. So you can do some research. With that said, it's so overwhelming. We have so much information now that it gets, people start to go down all of these rabbit holes, and that can sometimes perpetuate even more fear. So you're right, interview people, get a team around you. You don't just have your oncology team. You can look for, there's many naturopathic oncologists that are available. There's, nutrition, people doing what we do. I mean, it's really important to get the information, but don't just don't become, if possible, your own doctor.
Yeah.
Because then it's tough, and a lot of people they just get more fearful.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you don't want to create more fear, more stress, more blood glucose sky high.
And I will plug, I just want to say again, the book, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer, is a really great book. It's a lot of information, but it's a nice start to just understanding this sort of like what I've been talking about, this metabolic approach. That might be a good place. That's what I will mention to people. That and stop eating sugar.
It's the stop eating sugar, stop eating processed food, and stop eating the inflammatory oils. I mean, it's pretty basic, and then you can kind of go from there. But yeah, the sugar is a big one, and you'll hear, cancer feeds on sugar, and then you'll hear, no, it doesn't. There's no science behind that, but there's. What is your thought on that? I mean, what do you say to people who come to you and say, but the doctor says sugar doesn't affect cancer?
Yeah. Well, most doctors haven't had a whole heck of a lot of nutrition training. So that is something. I mean, they have a really great purpose, and it's not nutrition, so we can't rely on them to know every single thing. Right. So there is research that says that, sugar is cancer's primary fuel. It is. I mean, that's why we always say, that's why PET scans work, right? You take this, this sugar, and it lights up, the cancer gets super active. So I do believe in that statement. I also believe that if we can cut out sugar, we can help with our inflammatory system. We can help with, our blood sugar, our hormone balance, all these things. And that is making the terrain. So when we talk about the terrain, those systems of the body, it's like the garden of the body. and we want to make the garden as healthy as possible. We also want to make the terrain as inhospitable to cancer as possible. And cancer loves inflammation. It loves, you know, slow and sluggish blood and lymphatic. And so we can support the terrain by taking out, like you said, the processed food, the sugar, the inflammatory oils, and, you know, the list goes on. But
sure,
it's huge.
I would love your thought on something. You know, there are a lot of people who still push the thought. I'm not going to say this really properly, but the pH. The pH word. What's my word I'm looking for?
Alkaline.
Huh? Well,
alkaline.
yeah. So yes, the acid acidic body. The alkaline is the, you know. There's something that I'm thinking of, and it's anyway. But a lot of people believe that the more alkaline you are, right, get your body super alkaline, and cancer can't grow and bacteria can't grow. I have my own thoughts on this, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, and I think that the thing is that cancer is pretty crafty, and it can create basically its own microenvironment around it. So you know, an alkaline diet, I don't believe is a cancer cure. You know, no diet is, right? It's all very integrative. We would never say a ketogenic diet is a cure for cancer, but it can help with the terrain. The thing with cancer is that it can create this microenvironment around it, and or a tumor, and it doesn't necessarily matter. You know what you know, you can't make the body super duper alkaline and think that the cancer is going to go away. With that said, eating things that are very alkaline to the body, like eating a very alkaline rich diet, which is packed full of vegetables, that's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think what's happening is we're hanging our hat on this thing, this alkaline water and all this stuff, and then we're drinking alkaline water out of plastic.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So
talk about toxicity. Well, and my thought is too, if you constantly are drinking really high alkaline water, what are you doing to your gut pH? You know, we're supposed to have an acidic gut, and if we're squashing that fire in our gut, we're not breaking down our food, we're not utilizing our nutrients, we're allowing bacteria and parasites to grow and to, you know, opportunistically, you know, just get out of control. And you know, I've had this conversation a couple of times in recent history, and I think we just have to be so careful with these fads that have maybe some science behind them and some good things, but taking it way too far. Yeah.
Well, and I also feel like, you know, with any of this, watching labs, like we need to know what's going on. We can't just guess. And so that's really, really important. And what we see in our work that's so exciting is a lot of lab improvement. You know, and so that feels really good. You know, we can tell if somebody's, like I was saying earlier about cachexia, which is a really common thing that can happen with people that are going through treatment. You know, their bodies start to break down and they start to rapidly lose weight. You know, so we do a lot of things like I've been talking about, these interventions. It's not just a ketogenic diet. We are doing things to improve their numbers, say their protein levels, their inflammatory markers, all of that. So that's where it's more constant. That's this, you know, we're working with them kind of hand in hand.
Yeah.
Watching the response.
And that's the best thing about labs, is really being able to track and see the change. And I think it makes such an emotional impact, a mental impact on somebody who maybe is feeling one way, but you look at the numbers, they're feeling one way, or they've been told about their diagnosis or whatever it is, and you look at numbers like, this is huge. I mean, it changes the attitude, it changes the outlook when you see the numbers changing in a positive way. It's motivating, it's exciting, and so we only have 20 minutes. It's so frustrating. We talk forever because I want to talk about micronutrients, but I need to take a quick break and talk about our sponsor, Cellcore Biosciences, who is just amazing. I love who they are and what they do. They are innovative in their approach and their delivery system to get the nutrients to the cells. The goal is to work in and on the foundation of health, which is cellular health, DNA, mitochondria, to really allow for the body to repair and to balance and to rid it of toxins, biotoxins, parasites, worms, microbes that aren't supposed to be there. All of these things can put a really massive burden on the body. They also hold on to metals and toxins from the air and our food, and they can really, again, put a big burden on the body. So I love Cellcore. They do great stuff. You can only get them through practitioners because they are very strong and they work really, really well. Look, you can find practitioners around you. Obviously, I'm a practitioner and I use them on a regular basis because they are amazing. So thank you to Cellcore for being a sponsor. I want to talk about real quickly micronutrient testing because it's one of those, it started out as the first testing I did. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth on lab testing. And I still do it through a different company these days, but it can give us so much information. And I'm going to tell you that when I'm doing it, and I have some pretty chronic clients, I don't usually see cancer clients, but I have some who are pretty chronic, and oftentimes it's due to GI dysfunction, it's autoimmune disease. And what are we seeing? We're seeing across the board nutrients are in the tank, and they're eating, and they're trying to eat well even, and nutrients are still in the tank because why? They are inflamed and they're not digesting and breaking down and absorbing their nutrients. So I'm assuming, so you're doing micronutrient testing. What are you seeing?
Same, for sure.
Yeah.
We use a couple of different companies for micronutrient testing, and some of the labs, like if we can use serum, just straight up serum lab tests for things like vitamin A and vitamin D, fairly accurately. But it's really cool to get these other micronutrient tests so we can see the different, like, is the intracellular, like, is the vitamin B12 is a great example because you'll see in a serum test sometimes the vitamin D is crazy high, and that's because they're supplementing. However, we can look at other markers and we see, wow, their vitamin B12 status is kind of low. What's going on? And so that is oftentimes an absorption issue. The challenge that we have is that a lot of our clients are also going through treatment. So the likelihood of their bodies really absorbing some of this stuff isn't so hot anyway. So we might not do a micronutrient test while they're in the thick of treatment. We might wait until after. If we can do something before to get a baseline, that's kind of cool. But I think they're so valuable because it can see, because we're just kind of, I always call it, without looking at these tests, we're just throwing a dart at a wall without a dartboard. We don't really know. And so it's really helpful. And then what's cool is I'm always food first. So how much can we use food to get these nutrients in? And I think obviously the gut. I mean, the gut needs to be able to absorb. It's got to be healthy. It can't be super inflamed and have all of these, holes, so to speak, in it. So that's huge. And remembering too that so much of the immune system lies in the gut, and so we got to keep that puppy happy.
Yeah. So I'm curious, somebody who has been diagnosed and going through treatment. We know that drugs can deplete nutrients. We know that drugs, certain treatments, toxins, they can create that intestinal permeability. So somebody is going through the treatment and they're eating well. What happens though? I guess my question is, can you give support? And I'm specifically thinking like glutamine or something during treatment that helps to mitigate some of the dysfunction that the toxic drugs or that are trying to do a job, right? But they're creating sort of on that back end.
Yeah, I usually, if somebody's working with a naturopathic oncologist that's metabolically trained, then I would say that I would leave that up to them, the more supplements. So I would use things that could be like marshmallow root, tea and things like that are very, or aloe, things that are very nourishing to that tissue that can help support. Sometimes we'll use some, bone broth that can be great too for that. We use collagen powder sometimes. It just depends. We don't want to go overboard with that, because remember earlier when I said cancer can be crafty? If there's too much, I think so much of the time we're just using too much of these things. It's like, I do my collagen powder 3 times a day or whatever.
Right, yeah.
And we don't want to go too crazy, because the cancer could, if there's excess that the body can't use to say, sort of strengthen, I shouldn't say strengthen, but just utilize that collagen. Then if it's left over, hanging out over here, then cancer might be able to go snag it and use it to its benefit. So too much of a good thing maybe isn't such a good thing, And so I definitely want to be careful with that. But glutamine, there's some research out there. I mean, some people use it for only during treatment, to help with that, exactly what you're talking about. There are other products out there that are really great for formulas for helping with gut health that don't have glutamine in them. There is some talk about glutamine maybe being, something that cancer can utilize.
Sure, okay. Yeah.
To its advantage.
Sure.
So a little bit careful with glutamine.
That's so interesting, isn't it? And why you take a step back and you do the research and you go to people who have this information, because just because something is good doesn't mean it's good for everybody all the time. And I love glutamine, but we just have to be so careful. I think also, and this is not off topic, but maybe a little deeper than we should go, but I'm thinking NAC has that potential as well, right? Yeah.
NAC does, NAC. Yeah. There's, I think, probably a lot of things, and what we try to do, again, we always just go back to food, and we go back to the terrain.
Yeah.
So we don't want to get too crazy with, again, going at all the pathways that cancer might be, able to utilize. We really are like, how healthy is the terrain? Is this person hydrated? If they're hydrated, they probably have a better chance of having better gut health. Are they moving? Huge, right? If they're not moving, then they could have sluggish lymphatics. They could have, sluggish blood. We don't want that. So it's always looking at the terrain. How stressed out are they? I would say, as much as I love talking about food, and I'm always trying to bring it back to food, the majority of my calls are probably spent, maybe not the majority, but a large part are spent on, it's like therapy, which I love. I love, being there with people.
Yeah, very good. There's something I was going to say, but I don't remember what it was. So I think that what I want to make sure that we hit on, I want to talk about the nutrigenomics a bit, the testing that you do, and then of course getting into your services, how Remission Nutrition works, how you work with people, then how you can be found and resources for people, because you'll have a lot of resources on your website. And I also saw that you have a client portal, so I'd love to know what's involved in the client portal.
Awesome. So I'll just talk really quickly about the genetic piece. So while again we don't hang our hat just on the genetics, it's really enlightening for us, especially when we're working on creating a personalized nutrition plan for somebody. So we can see kind of, it's not set in stone, this genetic thing. We really have a lot of power over our genetics and how they play out. So that's really empowering and cool. So we know, and this goes back to that conversation earlier about vegan or, plant-based vegan, eating some animal protein. We can really utilize that report or that information to help really create a plan for somebody. So an example might be some people, they won't eat fish, say they're vegan, and there's a lot of people, a large part of the population from all of the reports I've looked at, and I've looked at many, a lot of people may have trouble turning, say, a plant-based source of omega-3 into a really absorbable source of omega-3. Omega-3s, remember, the anti-inflammatory oils. We need them. We get them from fish, fatty fish. And it's hard to get them from, say, walnuts for a lot of us. And so that's an example of why we might want to push, hey, can we just get some fish on board, help really high quality fish, low in mercury and all that jazz, high in omega-3 fats, multiple times a week, a couple times a week. You know, so that also gives us vitamin A and all of these things. Cod liver oil is actually also a really great source. So that's what we use the genetic information for, is just to help customize. There's a lot of information there too in how certain people might metabolize certain things, like certain types of fat. And so some people might have a hard time with saturated fat. We can see then in their genetics if they're, you know, in their lab work, if they are having trouble. And we can alter the types of fats that we give them. Again, you know, it's not always bacon and you know, all of those, like the lard and duck fat and things like that. So it's more, in my opinion, I like to do more of a Mediterranean diet because it's far less of the saturated fats. So we customize with that genome or genomic report.
The interesting thing that that I always want to, I feel like I want to put out there is that, you know, when we're looking at the genomic reports, they're your potential. It doesn't mean it's who you are, it's your potential. So which is why you take it and you pair it with the labs and the lifestyle and the symptoms and all of the things that go along with it. It's important to have the full picture and not just rely on one or two different things, especially a genetic report.
100%.
So let's talk about what you do, and I guess how you, I know what you do, but how you do it, and I'm curious about what's involved in the client portal. I saw that and I was like, I want to know what's in there.
It's so great. It's a really helpful tool for us, and I hope for our clients. I think for some people, they're like, oh, another portal, because they already have 3 more in there. But it's great because it's HIPAA compliant. So we use it for all communication. We help, that's where all of our intake forms are done. So people log in and they fill out their forms. We do a fairly elaborate intake, and we do a summary. It's sort of a journal entry for people, and I find that a lot of people find that very therapeutic, and it's really neat for me. Working with people one-on-one is such an honor. The things that I get to learn about them, you know, we work with people all over. We're worldwide, and so I find it such a gift to like get this window into their life, and it's really special. And I think it's an opportunity for people to look outside of just the, you know, answer this question yes or no, or a food diary. It's really talking about their life, and sometimes people will do like a whole chronology of, you know, from early on all the way through. So really helpful tool. So we have a really great intake process, and then we do food logging. Of course, that's huge. We have to know what people are eating, and when, and so that's important too. So we do a lot of one-on-one. We're working on some more sort of group opportunities, but mostly one-on-one with clients. We start, our initial consult is a 2-hour session, and as much as that sounds long, it actually flies by with most people. We have, you know, 3 different consultants now. One, Carrie, is just coming on board, and she's been in our administrative or more client relations position, so I'm super excited about that. So we'll have 3 very, very qualified people working with people and with clients, so it's exciting. We also do, like, I do an 1.5-hour nutrition genomic consultation. So somebody would get their genomic report, then I would take it and help them understand it and utilize the information. We do prevention, so that's one thing that I really love, because prevention is so important. Start this now. And then we work with people that are in all different stages of a cancering journey, we would call it. So whether they've just been diagnosed, maybe they've gone through treatment, then now they're coming to us for help in recovering from treatment. We really offer a lot of support. I love supporting people during treatment, actually, because that's where I can see a lot of our work just working really well for folks. So there's all different kinds. of services. We do packages, so you could do just a one-on-one or one-off session. I love it when people come back for at least a couple.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, it's so important. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
What we do?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, that's great. I love it. It's helpful because I still find that people don't know what nutritionists do. And it can be really confusing because everybody has their own ways of working and doing things. And so I think it's important for people to know, if they're listening to this and they're going through the journey, or they have a family member or a friend going through the journey, that they have an idea of, you know, kind of what it's going to look like, and continue to learn how to build their team and find the resources that are going to be best and give the best guidance, because it can be, I keep saying this, but it's true, it's just hard and it's confusing and it's frustrating, and so finding the people who just have the most knowledge is always the best.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we do, because we've been in the industry for quite a long time and fairly connected. Mm-hmm. You know, it's nice because I feel like sometimes I'm a connector. It's kind of like what you do, right? You hear of somebody, you're like, hey, let me send you over there. And so that is really helpful. We also, you know, I tend to be an over-informer sometimes, and so I really try to set up expectations in the beginning and ask clients, like, what kind of a learner are you? Am I going to overwhelm you by sending this 6-page thing, or do you want it? Everybody's different.
Yeah.
Everybody. So we give a lot of recipes. We don't do a ton of like, what meal plans necessarily that are really specific, that come with a grocery list and all that jazz, because I find that everybody's so different. They live in different places. What's available is different. But we do say, here's a typical breakfast for you, or here are a few different breakfasts for you, or lunches or dinners. Here's food timing information. Like, we do get obviously really specific.
Yeah, and I think that's good. That's a really good point, and it's a smart point, because I find the same thing is people, you know, if they're calling me and asking me questions, well, do you do meal planning and, you know, all these things? Like, everybody's so different. I give you tons of resources, but to give you a full-on grocery list and the whole thing, like, you probably aren't going to like what I like, or you might, or it's going to change. And so I think it's important to have that expectation. You know, again, it goes back to, you know, we're all unique and different, and as you said too, what's available. That's a really important point, when most of us these days are working virtually. So what I have available to me and what's available in New York or California or whatever could be very different. So,
yeah, and also empowering people, because it's really about a lifelong, you know, it's always thinking about lifestyle and empowerment. It's not just, like you said in the very beginning, I don't like the word diet. Well, I don't either. I like therapeutic diets, yes. Yeah. But we want to also be teaching people how to do it on their own, so they don't always have to rely on this grocery list or this, you know, this meal plan. They need to figure it out, and how to cook. And we work with people, like, you know, some people, they don't, that's one of our questions, like, do you like to cook? Yeah. Some people are like, no. So I help them along, like, let's figure out really simple things for you to do, and, you know, or asking for help, that's another good one.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Sometimes that's all it takes. Just ask for help. That's what. Sometimes I have to sort of have that one-to-one with a client. Just ask me. You know, don't think you're out here on your own doing it all by yourself, because you're not. So, talk about where you can be found, because we are about out of time, and I can't believe it.
I can't either. So Remission Nutrition is our website, and I also, again, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer is the book by Jess Higgins and Dr. Nasha Winters. It's an awesome resource. So yeah, you can email info@remissionnutrition.com. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, it's just Remission Nutrition. And where else? think that's it. I did send over a link
Yes.
to a recipe guide. It's just 10 recipes. It's awesome. It goes into the nutrition aspect behind each of the recipes too. It's pretty cool. And each of the recipes are kind of dedicated. It's what's in the book, but it's dedicated to one of the terrains. So say, there's a recipe for inflammation or anti-inflammation, things like that. So it's pretty cool. So there's a coupon code that I shared with you. So
yeah, I love that. Thank you. Yeah, so we will take that and we'll post it in the comments and post it all around for anybody who wants to download that and learn some more. I can't say it enough that if you are dealing with this or know somebody who's dealing with it, reach out. Reach out to me. I'm happy to be your resource, but reach out to Remission Nutrition because they are truly amazing at what they do. They've got so much information. I so want to go through Oncology Nutrition Institute. So many things to do. I think that it would be amazing and fascinating, and it's so needed. Every time I have a new person comes to me and says, guess what? I'm like, okay, I want to know more. I want to be able to help here. And I'll do some, but when it's most of the time, you're getting my call. So anyway, thank you everybody for joining. I'm so grateful. We'll have Jess Kelley on here in a month or so, and we'll talk some more about this and give you more amazing information. Of course, you can find me, tastelifenutrition.com, and then all of the social media is Taste Life Nutrition. You can fill out an assessment on the website that comes straight to me. I reach out to you personally and we chat about it a little bit. I'm also starting my Soulful Conception workshop and courses coming up here soon. So be on the lookout for that because I'm super excited about that. That's going to be really fun. And I think that's it. So obviously here every week, streaming live on KUHSdenver.com, Thursday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Join us. I believe I'm here next week, and then I have a family vacation coming up in a couple of weeks. So, but join us. We have amazing people on. Jen, you're awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm super grateful. You gave us a lot to think about, so thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you. Jen, if you'll stick with me for just a second, I want to chat with you a second. Thanks, everybody.